All right, so now we're going to work on our Painting Studio Skill Builders Creating Value. So when you get your paint, you're going to get a red, a yellow, a blue, because we have red, yellow, and blue. And then you're going to get black and white, because you're going to be mixing white to red and black to red, and then white to yellow and white. So what I want you to do first is scoop up half the red and move it to an empty space. Then you're going to rinse your paintbrush off. Dry your paintbrush off, and then take half of your yellow and move it to an empty space. Rinse your paintbrush off. Dry your paintbrush off, and then finally take half of your blue and move it to an empty space. Okay, so you're going to dip your paintbrush in the red, and you're going to paint this middle box underneath or over the word that says red. You're going to paint this in as neatly as possible. And you're not going to rinse your paintbrush off yet because you're going to start mixing color. So what you're going to do is you're going to add a little bit of white to one of the reds. And that's going to go here because it has a little bit of white. Then you'll add a little bit more white, that goes here. Now we have one white and one black, and we're going to mix it with yellow and green. So you may want to rinse your paintbrush off, but I don't think I need to. I'm just going to always pull the red from the edge. So if I get a little bit of red in the white like I just did, that's okay. Then I'm going to mix that with the red to make a slightly lighter version. And these squares are very, very small, so you only need to mix just a small amount. But you want to make sure that when you go to paint them, that they look very different. And look how neatly I'm trying to fill in that square. So I'm not just putting a big blob there. I'm not going to have just the smear of color. Each square is going to be very distinct and clear edges. So now I'm going to take a little bit more white, mix it with that color that I just made. So I'm not using this whole divot of red. I don't really need the whole thing. I'm just going to mix along the edge here. Now when I paint this color, I need to make sure it's different than my last color. And yes, there is a clear change between this one and that one. So I'm going to paint that square in very neatly. And then I'm going to take some more white, mix it with that red, that pink color that I just made to make it a little bit lighter. Paint that, make sure that's different than this one, which it is. Neatly paint in the square. Now my paintbrush is starting to get really thick with paint, and it's not wanting to paint a nice smooth edge. So I could take my paintbrush and kind of squish out the paint from it onto the paint palette. All right, and then I have one last one, and it says it's white. So I'm just going to rinse my paintbrush off, dry my paintbrush off. I always have to dry it off when I'm using liquid tempera. Find a clean spot of the white and just paint that here. Now that's quite a jump from this last color to white, but as long as they each look different, that's what matters to me, is that you've practiced mixing white with red and you know how to mix a variety of light and dark values with red. So now I'm done with the white. So now I'm going to do, these are the tints, now I'm going to do the shades. Tints are when you mix white with a color, shades are when you mix black with a color. So I'm going to rinse my paintbrush off, because you should never have white on your paintbrush when you're mixing your shades with black, or it'll look grayish. So now I have this other red. Again, I don't need all of it, so I'm going to get a touch of black. Wait a minute. Yeah, touch of black. I'm going to mix that with one edge of the red over here. And paint my first square next to red, because it just has a little bit of black in it. So this is going to be closest to red. Fill in my square nice and neat. Take another touch of black. And black changes the color pretty fast, so you don't need a whole lot of black. Paint my next square, making sure it looks different than this last square, that this color is different than this color, and it is. If they look the same, then you need to go back and add more. Either more white if you're mixing tints or more black if you're mixing shades. And then dip one more time, mix that around in the color I just painted. So I make it darker, paint this next to it. Now, to me, that looks very, very similar. So I'm gonna add some more black. I have the medium-sized paintbrush. You may wanna use the small paintbrush. So I'm finished and my last square is black. My paintbrush has a bunch of black and red on it, so I'm gonna rinse it off, dry it off, put it in the black that isn't messed up, and paint my last square black. Now, to save me some time, if I look down my worksheet here, my sketchbook page, I can see that black ends all three. So I could just go ahead, save some time, and paint these squares black. My paintbrush off, dry my paintbrush off, and now my next row is yellow. So I'm going to do yellow tints and yellow shades. So I'm going to take and dip my clean paintbrush in the yellow and paint this first square with yellow. Nothing mixed with it. And now I'm going to touch part of the white that doesn't have the red on it. So I'm going to pick a different spot on the white, mix it around with part of the yellow paint in one of the divots. Now, yellow tints are hard to see a change, so you are really going to have to work hard at this to make each one look different. Yellow's already such a light, bright color that adding white to it, it's difficult to see a change. And to make a change, sometimes you have to use a lot of white to make a clear change in your tints with the yellow. Okay, I think I did a pretty good job. Actually, those look very, very similar, these last two boxes, so I'm going to add some more white and paint over that. Much of a change, but I think it's enough so that we can definitely see the difference. And then this last square is white, so I want to clean my paintbrush off, dry my paintbrush off, and find a clean white space and paint this last box white. And I'm going to go ahead and skip down to the bottom to do that as well while my paintbrush is nice and clean. And so now I'm doing yellow and adding black to it. So I don't want any white on my paintbrush when I'm doing my shades. So I rinse my paintbrush off, dry my paintbrush off. I'm going to touch the part of the black that isn't messy and add it to the yellow I haven't messed up. Mix that black in with the yellow, part of the yellow. I'm not going to use the whole divot. With yellow, they tend to look a little bit greenish, and that's okay. So now I'm going to make it a little bit darker, so dip some more black. This one I want to make sure it looks clearly different than the last one. It's close, but I can see a difference. It's a little bit darker, but it's close, but it's still darker. So I'm going to go ahead and just scoop up some more black, add it to that last color I just painted for this to be my darkest shade. So there's my yellow value scale from light all the way to dark, my red value scale light all the way to dark, and now I have blue. So I've got the messy yellow on my paintbrush, rinse my paintbrush off, dry my paintbrush off, blue in the middle, so I'm just going to take some plain blue. Okay, so for the rest of this video, I'm using blue to create tints, adding white to it, and then adding black to regular blue to get shades. And I don't think that you need to watch me repeat what I did with red and yellow with the blue. So we're gonna fast forward and skip to the end. I'd like you to paint as neatly as possible. When you're finished, your paintbrush will go in the water basin. We'll put these on the drying rack. Sponges get put away. Pour out your water basin, rinse your paintbrush off, and then you're going to need to clean this off. You can use your paintbrush and the running water and wiggle it around to clean it off completely.